Welcome to Mr. Kelin Stories, the home of thrilling, emotional, and lesson-filled stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Here we dive deep into shocking affairs, betrayals, heartbreaks, and powerful life lessons that will touch your heart and open your mind. Every story is packed with suspense, drama, and an ending that will leave you inspired. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss a new story. Your support helps us bring you more incredible content. And as always, may your life be filled with love, wisdom, and endless blessings. Stay tuned, and let's begin today's story. James Carter had always believed in hard work, resilience, and loyalty. He had built his empire from the ground up, rising from a struggling entrepreneur to a self-made millionaire. His business acumen had turned a small startup into a nationally recognized corporation, earning him not just wealth but respect. He had the kind of life most people only dreamed of: an elegant penthouse overlooking the city skyline, luxury cars parked in his private garage, and invitations to the most exclusive social events in New York. But to James, none of those things mattered as much as his wife, Vanessa. She was the woman he had fallen madly in love with a decade ago, when they were both young and struggling. She had been his rock, his partner in everything, the one who celebrated his victories and held him through his losses. She had an effortless charm, beauty that turned heads in any room, and a warmth that once made James believe he was the luckiest man in the world. Yet, lately, something had changed. At first, it was nothing obvious, just little things that didn't sit right. Vanessa started spending more time at the gym, often coming home late, her face flushed, her hair slightly disheveled. When James kissed her hello, there were moments she seemed distant, her mind elsewhere. Then came the phone calls. Late at night, she would step out onto the balcony, speaking in hushed tones. Whenever James entered the room, she would quickly put her phone away, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Who was that?" he asked casually one evening. "Oh, just a friend," she replied too quickly, turning her attention back to her glass of wine. James tried to ignore the growing unease in his chest. Maybe he was overthinking. Maybe she was just going through something and needed space. But deep down, he knew better. One evening, James planned a romantic dinner at home, hoping to reignite the spark between them. He spent hours setting up, ordering Vanessa's favorite dishes, lighting candles, playing soft jazz in the background. When she arrived, she barely looked at the setup. "Oh, this is sweet," she said absently, scrolling through her phone. James clenched his jaw. Something was definitely wrong. During dinner, she was distracted, barely touching her food. Then, as if forgetting where she was, her phone lit up on the table. A name flashed on the screen. Ryan, gym trainer. Vanessa snatched the phone up quickly, pressing it to her chest. "It's nothing," she said, a nervous laugh escaping her lips. James felt his stomach twist. Nothing? Then why did she look like a child caught stealing? That night, James lay in bed beside her, staring at the ceiling while she slept peacefully. The room was silent except for the distant hum of city life beyond their window. His mind raced, replaying every moment, every suspicious glance, every whispered phone call. His gut screamed at him. Something was wrong. He turned his head slightly, watching Vanessa as she slept. He wanted to believe in her, in their marriage, in the vows they had exchanged. But trust wasn't about blind faith. It was about truth. And the truth, he had to find out what she was hiding. His heart pounded as he made a decision. Tomorrow he would get answers. James Carter had always believed that the truth, no matter how painful, was better than living in a lie. His entire business empire was built on facts, numbers, and logic. Emotions had no place in the world of high-stakes investments. But when it came to his marriage, he had let emotions cloud his judgment for too long. Now, as he sat alone in his office late at night, Staring at his reflection in the glass window, he knew one thing for certain. He needed proof. Hiring a private investigator wasn't an easy decision. A part of him still clung to the hope that maybe, just maybe, he was wrong. That maybe Vanessa was just going through a phase, that there was some logical explanation for the late nights, the secrecy, and the distant looks in her eyes. But the moment he saw the investigator's face when he delivered the report, James knew. "I'm sorry, Mr. Carter," the man said, placing a thick envelope on the desk. "It's all in there." James hesitated before picking it up. His hands felt heavier than usual, as if the weight of betrayal had already settled in his bones. He opened the envelope with slow, deliberate movements, his pulse hammering in his ears. And there it was. Photographs, pages of text messages, hotel receipts. Vanessa smiling at another man, touching his face, looking at him the way she used to look at James. The man was younger, muscular, full of life. Ryan, the gym trainer. James clenched his jaw as he flipped through the evidence, each piece more damning than the last. Late-night meetups at a private suite, messages filled with words of passion, words she had once whispered to James. His hands curled into fists. His entire body shook, but not just from anger, from heartbreak. For the first time in years, James Carter felt powerless. His entire life had been built on control, controlling his business, his wealth, his future. But this he had no control over. The rage came fast, violent, all-consuming. He wanted to destroy everything, her, Ryan, the entire illusion of their marriage. He pictured confronting her, throwing the evidence in her face, watching the color drain from her cheeks as she realized she had been caught. He imagined the humiliation, the regret, the pain in her eyes as she realized she had lost the best thing she ever had. But then, he paused. Would that really change anything? Would it undo the betrayal? Would it heal the gaping wound she had torn into his heart? Number James sat in his leather chair, breathing heavily, his eyes fixed on the city lights outside his window. The anger didn't leave. It simmered beneath his skin, a quiet storm waiting to break. But revenge wouldn't satisfy him. Not really. He needed to do something different, something unexpected, something that would make an impact far beyond his broken marriage. Vanessa had taken his trust, his love, but she would not take his dignity. Instead of wasting his energy on hate, he decided to channel it into something greater, something that would define him not as a man who was betrayed, but as a man who rose above it. And with that thought, James Carter picked up the phone and made the first call that would change everything. The evening was set. The reservation had been made at one of the most prestigious five-star restaurants in New York. The Sterling Rose, a place filled with golden chandeliers, soft candlelight, and the scent of freshly grilled filet mignon. James Carter sat at their usual table near the floor-to-ceiling window, watching the city lights flicker like distant stars. The place held memories, anniversaries, birthdays, moments of love. But tonight it would mark something else. Tonight, everything would change. Vanessa entered, radiant as always. She wore a sleek black dress, hugging her curves perfectly, her blonde hair styled in loose waves. Diamonds glittered on her wrist, a gift from James on their last anniversary. She walked toward him, a soft smile on her lips, as if nothing was wrong, as if she hadn't been sneaking around behind his back. "James," she purred, leaning in to kiss his cheek. James didn't move. Did she truly think she could keep up this act forever? He gestured for her to sit, his expression unreadable. "I ordered your favorite," he said smoothly. Vanessa laughed lightly, her fingers absent-mindedly brushing over the menu. "How sweet of you." She didn't notice the storm brewing in his eyes. James reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a thick envelope. With slow, deliberate movements, he slid it across the table. The soft flicker of the candlelight illuminated the contents, a stack of photographs. Vanessa's smile faltered. "What's this?" "Take a look." His voice was eerily calm. Hesitantly, she opened the envelope, her fingers trembling slightly. The moment her eyes landed on the pictures, her and Ryan sneaking into hotels, whispering intimately at the gym, tangled in each other's arms. Her face went pale. Her lips parted, but no words came out. The blood drained from her face. "James, I can explain." "Don't," he cut her off, his tone sharp. "You've already said enough with your actions." She swallowed hard, glancing around nervously as if the walls were closing in on her. James leaned back in his chair, his piercing gaze locked onto her. "You have two choices," he said, voice steady. "You leave with nothing, or you leave with a lesson." Vanessa's breath hitched. "Whoa, what do you mean?" James smirked, but his eyes were cold, a look she had never seen before. A look that told her she had just lost the most important thing in her life. "I've rewritten my will," he said slowly. "Everything I own, my company, my wealth, my investments, will no longer go to you." Vanessa's jaw tightened. "James, you're being irrational." "No," he interrupted. "I'm being smart. You showed me what you truly value, Vanessa. So I'm making sure everything I built goes to people who actually deserve it." She blinked, trying to process his words. "Wait, what?" "I'm donating a massive portion of my wealth," James continued, voice unwavering. "Scholarships, small businesses, housing programs, the money you once thought would be yours. It will now change lives instead." Vanessa's mouth fell open. "You're giving it all away?" "Not all of it," James said, tilting his head. "Just enough to make a difference." Her eyes darted across the table, as if searching for a way out of this nightmare. "You're doing this to punish me," she hissed. "No, Vanessa," James said, his tone softer now. "I'm doing this because I refuse to let betrayal define me. You chose greed. I choose purpose." Vanessa sat frozen, realization crashing over her like a tidal wave. She hadn't just lost her marriage. She had lost everything. James picked up his glass of wine, took a slow sip, and smiled. "For the first time in years," he said, setting the glass down, "I finally feel free." James Carter had spent years building his fortune, making deals in glass-walled boardrooms, and expanding his empire across industries. He had seen the ruthless side of business, where numbers mattered more than people. But nothing, not even the harshest business betrayal, had ever wounded him like his wife's affair. Pain had a way of breaking a man or making him stronger. James refused to be broken. Instead, he was about to turn his suffering into something much greater than he. Instead of hiding from the world, he went public. It started with a single interview. A famous journalist had caught wind of his shocking decision and reached out, eager to uncover the truth. Sitting in a sleek television studio, cameras capturing his every move, James faced the world with a new purpose. "My wife's betrayal wasn't just personal," he said, his voice steady but charged with emotion. "It opened my eyes to something bigger, the way we as a society judge people unfairly. The way opportunities are hoarded by a privileged few while others, no matter how hard they work, are pushed down." The journalist leaned forward, intrigued. "So what are you doing about it?" James exhaled slowly, a small smile playing on his lips. "I'm giving back." The next morning, headlines exploded across every major news outlet. "Millionaire betrayed, turns heartbreak into a movement." "James Carter's revenge, giving millions to those in need." "From pain to purpose, how a self-made mogul is changing lives." His phone rang nonstop. People were stunned, inspired, even skeptical. Was this real, or was it just a publicity stunt? But James didn't care about the doubters. He knew what he had to do. James didn't just talk, He acted. James launched a $50 million scholarship fund for students from underprivileged backgrounds: Black, Hispanic, Indigenous, Asian, students who had the talent but not the resources. "I built my empire from the ground up," James told reporters. "But I had doors open for me that others don't. It's time to open those doors for them." He partnered with developers to create affordable housing in cities where low-income families struggled. His foundation provided rent assistance, financial education, and job placement programs. "This isn't about handouts," he stated in an emotional speech. "It's about giving people a fair chance to succeed." James established a multi-million-dollar investment fund for minority entrepreneurs, helping them grow businesses that banks and investors often overlooked. "I've seen talented people with brilliant ideas get shut out just because they don't look like the typical CEO," James said. "I'm here to change that." Not everyone supported his movement. Critics accused him of being reckless, throwing away his wealth in an emotional decision. Others claimed he was making it about race, choosing sides, dividing instead of uniting. James didn't flinch. "This isn't about revenge," he said during a press conference. "If it were, I'd be tearing my wife down. Instead, I'm lifting others up. If that bothers you, maybe the problem isn't me." His words went viral. People across the country, from struggling students to single mothers to small business owners, began sharing their stories. James had become more than a businessman. He had become a symbol of hope. James Carter was no longer just a wealthy CEO. He was a man who had taken betrayal and turned it into a revolution. Celebrities, activists, and business leaders joined his cause. His initiatives grew. Within a year, his programs had already changed thousands of lives. And as he stood on stage at a national charity gala, looking out at the people he had helped, James realized something. His wife had taken his love, his trust, but she hadn't taken his purpose. And that, he thought with a quiet smile, was something no one could ever steal. Months had passed since James Carter had exposed the betrayal that once shattered him. But now, as he stood at the entrance of the Carter Foundation Community Center, he felt something entirely different. Not pain, not regret, but a deep, unshakable sense of peace. The large glass doors swung open, revealing a beautifully designed space filled with laughter, warmth, and hope. Children ran across the freshly polished floors, their backpacks bouncing on their shoulders. Parents, once homeless, now had jobs, stability, and dignity. Young entrepreneurs who had once been overlooked stood proudly as they launched their businesses. James had come full circle. As he walked through the center, James shook hands with people whose lives had changed because of his decision. A young woman, Maria, once forced to drop out of college, now stood before him as a scholarship recipient. "Mr. Carter," she said, her voice filled with gratitude, "because of you, I'm going to become the first lawyer in my family. I promise I won't waste this opportunity." James smiled, his heart swelling with pride. "You don't owe me anything, Maria. Just go out there and change the world." A single mother, Deshawn, who had been living in her car with her two kids, now had a warm apartment and a stable job. "You gave us a home," she whispered, tears in her eyes. "For the first time in years, I don't have to be afraid." James gently squeezed her hand. "You were never undeserving. The world just failed to see your worth." Javier, a young entrepreneur, had been denied business loans for years, but thanks to James's fund, his dream of owning a cafe had come true. "I didn't just get money," Javier said. "I got a chance, and that's all I ever needed." James chuckled, taking a sip of the cafe's signature brew. "You've got talent, Javier. This coffee alone is going to make you a millionaire one day." The entire room erupted in laughter, but beneath it all was something powerful, a shared understanding that one man's heartbreak had become another's salvation. The unexpected reunion. As James stepped outside for fresh air, a familiar voice stopped him in his tracks. James. He turned, and there stood Vanessa. She looked nothing like the woman she had once been. The expensive designer dresses, the sparkling jewelry, the aura of wealth. It was all gone. Instead, she stood in simple clothes, her once confident posture replaced by hesitation. Her affair with Ryan had ended months ago. She had lost everything: the mansion, the luxury, the status. All of it had crumbled. For a long moment, they just looked at each other. Then Vanessa spoke softly. "I heard about everything you've done, about this place, about how you turned it all around." James remained silent, studying her. There was no bitterness in his heart, no hatred left in his soul, just understanding. "I made mistakes," Vanessa admitted, her voice trembling. "And I lost everything. I I just wanted to say I'm sorry." James exhaled, looking out at the sunset. "I forgave you a long time ago, Vanessa." She blinked in surprise. "You did?" He nodded. "But forgiveness doesn't mean going back. It means letting go. And I have." Tears welled up in her eyes. She nodded slowly, realizing the truth. She had broken him, but she hadn't destroyed him. And in losing him, she had lost the best thing in her life. Without another word, she turned and walked away. And James? He didn't feel anger. He didn't feel sadness. He felt free, a new beginning. That night, as James stood before the people celebrating at the community center, he raised a glass of champagne and spoke from the heart. "There was a time when I thought betrayal was the worst thing that could happen to me," he said. "But now I realize it was a blessing in disguise, because that pain led me here, to something bigger than myself." He looked around the room, his voice steady. "We all have pain. We all have moments where life breaks us. But we have two choices: let it destroy us, or let it transform us." A roar of applause erupted in the hall. As James stood there, surrounded by people whose lives had been changed, he felt something he hadn't in years: pure, unshakable happiness. And that was the greatest revenge of all.